Hello and welcome to the CineManiax podcast. I'm your host, Chris Reed, the editor of Film Festival Today, lead film critic at Hammer to Nail, and chair of the Department of Film and Moving Image at Stevenson University. On today's show, we'll talk about the 2025 Sundance Film Festival and some of our favorites that played the fest. Joining me on the show is MJ O'Toole, a fellow critic at Hammer to Nail and the digital marketing manager for Third Impression, which specializes in digital marketing for independent films. It's great to have you on the show, MJ. Thanks for joining us.
Chris, thank you so much for having me on. It's so great to be on your special Sundance episode. Yeah, I bet we have a lot to talk about. Were you on the ground at Sundance?
I was not on the ground at Sundance. I had a virtual press pass because I was not going to head to Park City this year. As you well know, it's very expensive, and it also happens to occur at the very start of our spring semester at Stevenson, and so it's very difficult for me to get away. But it's great that you were on the ground. So let's start with you. What were your three faves from Sundance? Tell me.
Cool. So my number three favorite, I have to say, would be this very unique documentary I saw called Zodiac Killer Project. And this film actually won the Next Innovator Award, which was juried by Elijah Wood. And this film is directed by this Englishman, Charlie Shackleton. And it's basically about kind of the nature of true crime documentaries. But actually what Charlie Shackleton is doing is he's narrating what his Zodiac Killer movie would have looked like had he made one. And for this, he uses shots of the barren California landscapes and different California towns and cities, describing sequence by sequence what would have happened in his film in those particular locations. But at the same time, he kind of intercuts it and compares making his film to other true crime documentaries. But in doing that, as the documentary goes forward, he kind of calls out the moral and ethical lines of true crime documentaries and people's fascination with them. Even though the film has a very dark and barren tone, his narration is so cheeky and very just so funny. The entire crowd inside the Egyptian theater was roaring with laughter.
Nice. It sounds fascinating. And Charlie Shackleton has made one of my favorite short documentaries for The Guardian newspaper. They have a documentary series called Fish Story, which I highly recommend if you like Zodiac Killer Project. So what's next? What's your number two?
Number two is this black and white movie called Obex, which also premiered at the next competition. And it is directed by Albert Burney. I
just want to interject because Albert Burney is a local Baltimore boy. So represent!
And actually, this film is set in Baltimore in 1987. And Albert Burney stars as this agoraphobic man named Connor, who kind of shelters himself in his home that is surrounded by screens, TV and computer screens in almost every single room. And his only true companion is his dog, Sandy. He's also haunted by the cicadas surrounding his house. Eventually, he finds an ad for this computer game named Obex, which he is fascinated by. And it's an old disk drive game that he plays. And at first, it seems kind of boring and unexciting and mundane game. But eventually, all these different supernatural things start to happen around him. And eventually, the game takes on a life of its own in a way that it sucks his dog into the game's universe. So Albert Burney now has to enter the game, and he teams up with anthropomorphic TV man to go on this journey in this Middle Earth-like universe to save his dog. And he also uses his own DIY style and low-budget filmmaking altogether to kind of build his own world. And it's a world that's very full of depth, and a world that works perfectly in the black and white format that he shot it in. And another thing I have to shout out about this film is that it was also shot on Canon DSLR. And I actually got to speak with the co-writer and cinematographer Pete O's, and he said he shot the film on a Canon 5D. So it's amazing to know that movies are still being used on DSLRs and mirrorless.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing because, of course, the 5D was a big sensation over a decade ago. But, Albert Burney is a very innovative filmmaker. I've had him visit my classes before, and I really look forward to seeing this film. And I look forward to hearing what your number one is.
And I'm going to have to say it is Max Walker Silverman's Rebuilding. It stars Josh O'Connor as a cowboy who loses his entire ranch to a forest fire, and he moves into a trailer park that's occupied by other forest fire survivors, one of whom is a single mother, recently widowed, played by Callie Reese. And during this time, he also reconnects with his young daughter. He kind of comes to the realization of the meaning of family and community and what it means to him. The film altogether is just very gentle and it's very poignant and it's just so uplifting. And not to mention, because of the timely subject matter, given the events that happened in LA just the days before Sundance, it definitely shines a light on how people living in more rural areas, more rural lands, not only have their lives affected, not only just by losing their homes, but also places that were their livelihoods as well. So Max Walker Silverman did such an amazing job with writing all these characters with such compassion, and he gives each and every one of them a story and their own humanity.
Well, that sounds amazing. I really liked A Love Song very much, and I'm a big fan of Josh O'Connor. He, of course, for those who don't know, he played Prince Charles in seasons 3 and 4 of The Crown on Netflix, and he was in a film in 2023, I think it was, La Chimera, or maybe it was 2024, that I really, really liked. And of course, Callie Reese is in True Detective Night Country. So it really sounds like an amazing film, and I plan on seeing it. So let me tell you my three, and they're in alphabetical order. So two of them are documentaries. Actually, most of the films I liked at the festival were documentaries. But there's Cutting Through Rocks, from Mohammad Reza Aini and his wife Sarah Khaki. This is a film about the first woman elected to the town council in her northwestern Iranian town. She is an independent woman. She is a midwife who has really created a bond with the women in her community. She promises to get things done, and not only is she the first woman elected to the town council, but she also gets the most votes. But after a while of proving her worth by getting all these public works projects done, she starts to rub the men the wrong way because she's also trying to empower the young women in her town, and there is pushback. And the film follows both the highs and lows of her professional and personal career. And it was shot over 7 years, and it's really quite amazing the access that these filmmakers had. I interviewed them as well, and they talked about how it was important that it be a man and a woman making this movie so that they could get access to different parts of the community that way. They themselves are Iranian, though they live in the United States now. Then another documentary, again, I'm going in alphabetical order, Middletown, from another husband and wife team, or wife and husband team, Amanda McBain and Jesse Moss, who have done such films as Boy State, Girl State, The Mission. And this is a documentary about a high school broadcast news team in New York State, 60 miles north of New York City in the 1990s in Middletown, New York. And this high school group had an amazing English teacher who had sort of gotten bored teaching the regular curriculum, and so had applied for a grant and gotten cameras to teach electronic English. He was looking for topics for them to pursue and turn them on to some toxic waste in the community. And they ended up uncovering some real corruption at the local and state level. And this film profiles the work they did and the films that they made, and even more amazingly follows three of them into their current life, showing how much these experiences in high school affected who they are today and what they are doing today. And I found the film really inspiring, showing what can be accomplished at the grassroots level and how important a teacher can be. As a former high school teacher, I know I'm at a university now, but I found this really quite moving. And finally, there's the one non-documentary in this particular mix is Where the Wind Comes From Tunisian director Amel Guellaty. I have an interview with her that's playing at the end of this podcast. It's a road trip movie that follows two best friends, Alyssa and Mehdi, who are not romantically involved but have grown up together, and they go on a trip south of Tunis, the capital, to participate in an artistic competition with the prize a trip to Germany. It's a German-sponsored competition because they want to get out of Tunisia, where there just aren't any opportunities for young people to speak of. And so all along this road trip, we see a divided Tunisia between the haves and the have-nots. And the thing that really stood out to me in this film, in addition to the performances from the two young leads, is the cinematography. Amel Guellaty is a photographer, and although she did not shoot this film herself, she gave very precise instructions to her director of photography, and the compositions just blew me away. So those are my three. This festival was notable for there not being a bidding war, as there often is at Sundance. Therefore, I ask you, do you have any thoughts on which films that you heard about or saw at Sundance, let's keep it to one or two, may make a big splash at Sundance? Just a quick wrap up.
Twinless. And that one actually won 2 awards at Sundance, the U.S. Dramatic Audience Award and Best Lead Performance for Dylan O'Brien as well. And our co-critic, Matt Dillman, shout out to him, he had a lot of praise for that film.
I was going to watch that one after it won its awards, but perhaps to your point, it had already gotten such buzz that they actually had to take it down because clips from it were appearing online. Well, let's leave it at that then, with Twinless as the film to keep your ears to the ground about, and I certainly look forward to hearing to watching it. Well, thank you for being on the show, MJ, and for sharing your thoughts about Sundance.
Thank you for having me on. It's been amazing getting to recap both of our Sundances.
Next up, I'd like to share my interview with Tunisian director Amel Guellaty, who made Where the Wind Comes From, which I just mentioned among my Sundance faves. In Tunisia, as in much of the world these days, there are increasingly fewer opportunities for young people, especially those not part of the elite. In Where the Wind Comes From, her feature debut, director Amel Guellaty follows besties Alyssa and Mehdi as they go on a road trip, with the chance to escape their bleak prospects as the final prize. Stunningly photographed, courtesy of cinematographer Frida Marzouk, the movie offers hope and despair alike in its meditation on class, culture, and friendship.
Okay, so the first thing that struck me in your movie was the precision of your framing. In general, your film is beautifully photographed by cinematographer Frida Marzouk. I really, just right away, was impressed with that. I wonder if you could discuss why you wanted in this movie such careful, often almost symmetrical images, and how you worked with Marzouk to achieve those images.
Okay, so thank you so much. First of all, I really it was one of my goal to do this kind of movie. As a photographer, I love image, and I said that to my actors before the shoot. I said, I giving you all my time during rehearsal, because all my time during the set is going to be for image. So you have to come prepared to know what kind of emotion you have to get out of you, because I can prepare with you, but it's too complicated to prepare the image as I want, as you said, so meticulously before the shooting. I have to do it during the shooting. So this is what I do. I rehearse a lot with the actors, and then when I arrive there, my time is to have a good shot. So image is really a passion for me, and I came with a book during the shooting. Frida was like, oh my God, what is this? This is all my references, and all my references, it goes from Ida to Pulp Fiction, and through Asian movie, it goes all over the place. But I have a reference for every shot in the movie, and I have a storyboard for every shot in the movie. And what I wanted is to not take the road trip format rule, which is handheld camera and go, and to go toward the imagination part, and to go to the realistic part, to create kind of a really organized image in the chaos of Tunisia. Also, it's my aesthetic. I love this kind of image. And since Black Mamba was my first short movie. So what I did in Black Mamba is there is a day shoot and night shoot. And during the day shoot, the main character is just a young woman. And during the night shoot, she is a boxer that does underground fights. So the idea was to do hand camera during the day and kind of white light, and during the night warm light and really precise shot. And I hated it because the first part, it wasn't my aesthetic. And even though I had the whole thought about it to say, okay, this is reality and the fighting is her imagination, not her imagination, but her dream, I didn't like the fact that I don't do something that is aesthetically close to me. So I decided to, even though I do a road trip, I don't care. I will stick to what I want and what I like. And what I don't like is organized shot, and that the shot also speak as much as the dialogue, because the idea was to always get them in the same shot, to not do a shot reverse shot, to except if they are fighting. So when they're fighting, they are in different shots, and even if they are the same shots, something is between them, or a broken chair, or the head of someone, or so the idea is that you can see the connection through the image, and you can see the beauty and the stability of their relationship into the chaos of Tunisia.
Speaking of the chaos of Tunisia, throughout the world right now, not just in Tunisia, there are many young people struggling to figure out the future and to find a meaningful path forwards. What would you say is unique about the situation in Tunisia?
Tunisia is between two worlds. So it's an Arab and a Muslim country. So there is the roots of the Arab and Muslim tradition in it. And at the same time, it's the most open-minded country in the Arab world. You can abort in Tunisia legally. So you have a woman they have a law code only for women to make sure that women's rights are preserved in Tunisia. So you have this mixed between the tradition part, the Arabo-Muslim part, and the really open-minded part, some kind of Western part, let's say the good thing in the West. And it's a mix of this in Tunisia. And this is what makes this youth really interesting and really open-minded and really creative, and but still in a real economical crisis and instability, political instability. So they have to face all of this problem. But I think the mix of also Tunisia is the northest point in Africa, and everybody colonized us. Right. The whole world, Rome, the Greek, the Viking, the Arab, the Turk, the French. So it's a really mixed country, I see I'm blonde with blue eyes and I'm 100% Tunisian. So you can find a lot of different type of Tunisia. This is the beauty of this country, is this mixity.
Right. That's fascinating. But speaking of this mix, your film definitely highlights two different Tunisias. You show us the very wealthy and the much less fortunate. Are such wealth disparities worse than they once were? You talk about, at some point they reference the previous dictatorship and now things are no better. How would you say things are now compared to how they have been?
During the Ben Ali years, or the dictator between 1987 and 2011, the good thing that he didn't do a lot of good things, but he did one good thing, is to create or preserve, let's say, a middle class. So Tunisia, for example, is not like Morocco. Morocco, there are really poor people and really rich people. In Tunisia, there is this huge middle class. But with the crisis after the revolution, and because economic, not only because of the revolution, this middle class become way more poor and way more small. But I think the biggest gap between the richest and the poorest in Tunisia is the cultural gap. There is a big difference. The rich is going to speak way more in French. And the richer is going to say, like in the movie, she say, "Oh, I know how Arab people are." They don't consider themselves as Arabs. This is really weird. There is kind of, and this is why they don't look at this youth with beauty. They think that it's a youth that don't want to work and that don't want to move. So there is like a cultural gap. They way more Western. They way more. they different. There is a big difference of tradition and how to do it. So this is the biggest gap for me, not only the money, but also like how they see the world and how they consider themselves. When, by example, if you take Lebanon, Lebanon is not but a good example, but if you take Saudi or other Arab country, they feel all Saudi, they're really proud of it.
Right.
Where in
Right.
Tunisia, the rich is going to say, oh, we're not Arab, we're not like this, we're Phoenician. They come back to 3,000 years ago.
Going back to the images, the visuals, you chose a particular type of black and white drawing for Mehdi to compose of Alyssa. How did you land on that kind of artwork to be his thing?
So what I wanted is to create a surrealistic images, and I worked with a really talented artist from Gabonese, called Willa. And the idea was because I had this color code in the movie with red and yellow and blue that you can see the whole movie, but I wanted that Mehdi's drawing will be black and white also to add some deeper level and more, because I was so scared that the movie would be too candid sometimes or too childish, because sometimes the vision that Alisa had that is inspired by Mehdi's drawing, there are some people when it was just a script, not now, I never had this feedback, but during the script writing, they say it's a bit childish. And I was like, this is not what I want. I don't want any childish reference. So what I want, this is why I choose the black and white to make the difference between the reality when I choose a lot of colors, and to make it a little bit deeper and more tortured. Do we say tortured?
Tortured sounds, it's a good word.
Okay.
And so you just mentioned this, but where did you come on the idea of Alyssa's own imagination sort of taking over the image, whether it's building off her hand or we see it in the sky or she levitates in the nightclub? So how did you decide to make that how her imagination works?
Because it's my imagination works like this. So like her, I don't imagine things going out. It's not that poetic, my imagination, but definitely when I don't feel good or when I'm uncomfortable, I use an imagination that I have to kind of escape. And I always felt that was such a strength in my personality, like, because it's sometimes I sleep like this, like it's meditating, it's mental health. I don't know why we don't use imagination more for mental health, because for me, it's really like a way to get out of my trouble and to go in my world where everything is however I want. And so this is why I wanted to put that in the movie. And then it was really complicated in the beginning because I didn't find link between Alisa imagination and the rest of the movie. So once I found the link between Alisa imagination and Mehdi's drawing, I thought, okay, this movie is ready to go, because it made sense that they inspire each other. It made sense also that to add another layer to that friendship, to make it even deeper, that they share an imagination, that they inspire an imagination. So this is how I end up doing this. And then during the post-production, we talked a lot about doing 2D or 3D, and also to avoid any childish moment with 2D, and to mix really their imagination with the reality, to not get out of the reality, because I don't want to make calibration changes or specific edit. I want something really mixed in the reality. So this is why I decided to make it 3D.
How did you cast? I haven't asked you about Aya and Slim. How did you cast them as Alyssa and Mehdi?
They are around somewhere.
Yeah, they are. But I think it's easier to just talk to one person in an interview.
Yeah, especially in Zoom.
Yeah.
So Aya and Slim, I know Aya since a long time because she was the stunt on my first short, which is Black Mamba. So it was a short about a woman boxer. And Aya is a box champ in Tunisia. So this is why she was the one who really boxed in my short movie. And I already loved her face and her energy. And so I kept her in my mind. And when I started the casting, I called her. I said, come do the casting. And she was amazing. The first casting, I knew it was her. I said to my producer, okay, I'm going to see other women to please you. But I already know that it's her. And Slim, it was more complicated because I didn't know him, and also I had a less precise idea of Mehdi, of what he should look like, when I knew that Alisa was brown hair, black hair, and I kind of had exact idea of what I wanted. So I casted a lot of people, and even Slim, I casted him 4 times. The fourth time he said, enough, you pick me or not. I was like, oh, yeah, I pick you. I needed to have for them like a really strong relationship, really strong friendship. So I cast them each one alone and then together to see how it worked. But they knew each other from before. They weren't friends, but they knew and respected each other from before, and they followed both their career. So I was definitely happy to see, since the first casting, a good connection between them.
Yeah, and they definitely do have a good rapport. Final question, because I don't want to go too long. I'm curious about the choice to have it be a German art competition. Is there a lot of German investment in Tunisia right now?
No.
I would expected the obvious choice would have been French, but
Yeah.
you went with German. Yeah.
This is maybe why I didn't pick French.
Yeah. That makes sense.
No, to tell you the truth, France lost its how to say it, like by example, in Tunisia before, everybody spoke French.
Right.
Okay, so a bad French maybe, but everybody spoke French. Now, if you go to speak with any young people in Tunisia between 0 and 25, he's not going to speak French at all. Everybody going to speak English because of the TV, the shows, the movie. And France also have such a bad politic for immigration and how they treat Arab in France that nobody wants to go in France anymore.
Right.
In Tunisia, they want to escape Tunisia, that's for sure. And if they are in France, they're going to be really happy. But in the idea, in the goal, in the dream, France is not the dream anymore.
Right.
Germany is way more the dream. United Kingdom is way more the dream. Even Italy is more the dream because it's a question of political. So this is why I didn't go for France.
That makes sense. Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Where the Wind Comes From is a lovely story told in a striking way. You can read the full transcript of my interview at Hammer to Nail. If you're curious about any of the films we discussed on today's show, be sure to look for them in theaters or via your streamers, although it may be a while before they are released. You can read my film reviews at Film Festival Today and Hammer to Nail. For the CineManiax podcast, I'm your host, Chris Reed. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you at the movies.